It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. Good to have you in studio today. Today we're going to bring up another cold case. We've done this a couple of times now. The first one, we talked with Cottonwood Police Department about the Marisol Gonzalez homicide. On the second occasion, we spoke with the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and the Kathy Sposito homicide. And Lieutenant Andy Reinhardt with the Prescott Police Department, a very good friend of the station. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you face to face, as opposed to on the phone every day.
That's right. That's right. My second time on.
Your second time on. That's right. Yeah. So you're not unfamiliar with how the whole thing works.
No.
But you guys have got a cold case, and we talked about it a couple weeks back on the show. Not the show, but in our news. You sent out a press release. There's a homicide from 2002 that you guys have been working on, and. First, maybe we should start with what a cold case is. Let's refresh everybody's memory.
Well, when our detectives work a case, they do try to work the cases until we end up with no leads or no further avenues where we can pursue. And what we do is, as the detectives are actively working a case, why they try to meet on occasions as a group and talk about what each individual is doing and how their portion of the investigation is going. And then as a group, we collectively try to think of other avenues that we can take to try to pursue the case to where we can make an arrest on it. And oftentimes, the detectives get focused on one MO or one suspect, and sometimes when you leave a case alone after we have no further leads for a while, then we get another group of detectives to pick up the case and with a fresh mind go in there and try to see if there's other leads that maybe was overlooked by the group because they were so focused in one direction or another. And the detectives do try to keep an open mind and pursue every avenues that they can, but naturally, if you really do believe somebody's a suspect in the case, you do try to go after that suspect. Well, this case now, which occurred on June 4th of 2002, is approaching 10 years. And
do you know how long this one's been sitting since anyone's actually looked at it, or has the detective always had the file in front of him? And
well, we have always had the file in front of us.
Okay.
And there have been times where we kept on picking it up, looking at other avenues to take. And we've met with county attorney on numerous occasions talking about the case as well to see if they can think of other issues. And so we've really never let it die. And so this case now has been given to a cold case squad, which is common within police departments. They have groups of individuals that volunteer their time that are former officers. We've had a cold case member that was former FBI agent in our group. And so, they come with a lot of good experience. They're all retired. They got many 10 years in with law enforcement. And so they pick up the case and they too try to start fresh, look at the case, and then pursue leads in the case as well. And on this particular case that we're going to talk about...
Yeah, let's talk about this one now.
Yeah, the cold case squad actually came to the same conclusion as to who the primary suspect is in the case as our detectives did.
Now, how long did they look into this? How long have they been working on this case?
Well, it's actually been quite a while since they got the case. We've got 2 notebook binders that are probably 4 or 5 inches thick with information that they have to re-review. And so, it takes quite a while to read through all that documentation. They look at witness statements. They look at what each officer did on the case, the medical examiner's report.
Do they actually go out and meet with the people, too, that you guys have talked to in the past about the case?
They will, yes.
Okay.
They'll go back out. They'll re-interview people to see if stories have changed over the course of the 10-year period. When police talk to somebody fresh, that's the best recollection they're going to have.
Right.
And if somebody's going to lie to the police over whatever it is that they could have saw, they, obviously they're not going to remember those lies as if they were the truth. So, we do try to re-interview people, see if their stories change. And sometimes, as in this case, there are witnesses that we know are out there that don't want to be identified for various reasons. And I'm very appreciative that you're having me on the show so we can try to entice a witness that we're looking for to come forward.
Oh, I'd love to have, one of these cold cases solved by one of you guys coming in and talking on the show. That would be great. I mean, that's the goal of the show. Are the cold case, and we're going to get to the case too. We'll talk about the case. I promise. We'll talk about the case. The detectives that are they detectives? They're retired police officers, detectives. You mentioned there's one that's an FBI agent. Now these guys come in, and gals come in and sit down, and they've probably got a room all to themselves where they work on these cases. Are they given the same amount of free range as, say, a detective right now in the Prescott Police Department?
Well, they are to a point.
Okay.
They are not currently certified within the state as a police officer. So if they're going out to talk to a suspect, for instance, they will bring one of our detectives out to stand by during
they're shadowed.
the interview. They are sometimes,
okay.
not on every occasion. If they're going to go out and talk to maybe a witness or something, I mean, they will go out themselves and do the interviews. But if it's going to become a point where they may need law enforcement action taken, they will bring out, another one of our detectives.
Okay, but we don't know exactly how long they've been looking at this particular one, that they've come up with the same conclusion that you guys did way back in 2002.
Well, this particular case, our cold case squad, which really there are two individuals that are really taking this case on, they've actually had this case for about 6 months now, and they have gone out and done some further investigation work on this case.
Okay, they find some new stuff?
They did, and they were able to actually eliminate an individual that we thought could have wrote a particular note, and that note is very important part in this case where, again, if we can get somebody to come forward on that particular note, I think we would easily make a successful arrest on the case.
How do you find these detectives for the cold case unit?
Well, we have, at least in Prescott, there's a large group of people that are retired that are former officers, and I think for the most part it's word of mouth that we do have this assignment, and people that have been in the law enforcement industry know that there are cold case squads in law enforcement agencies, and so they'll just voluntarily come forward and say, hey, I'm a retired law enforcement. And
was that the case here? These guys just, they've got an itch, I imagine.
They do. And
you detective all those years, and then you're not a detective anymore, but you've got to still have that itch.
Right, and they do. And there are times where, when you're retired, you do have some time, and, you enjoy what you were doing in your prior career, and although the opportunity came to retire, they still enjoyed the job and maybe not want to do it full-time basis, but can do it at their leisure, that they will do it.
Let's take our first break. Okay?
Okay.
Lieutenant Andy Reinhardt with the Prescott Police Department in studio today. When we come back, we'll talk about the case that the cold case unit's been looking at. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
Hi, I'm Steve Skurja with Yavapai Silent Witness. Marcel Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Marcel's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Skurja.
The pain will not control us. It will never break us, define us, or keep us still. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? Visit the Arthritis Foundation at fightarthritispain.org.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Good to have you with us today. Lieutenant Andy Reinhardt with the Prescott Police Department in studio. We're talking about a cold case that they recently reissued information on. Maybe a little more information was released with this on this homicide that happened back in 2002. Now that we talked about the cold case unit and the guys that have been working on this for the past 6 months and kind of came up with some new stuff, you said there's also a reward?
There is,
okay.
And today we upped the reward to $10,000.
On this case?
That's correct.
Okay.
So any person that can supply us information that leads to an arrest of the individual responsible for this murder will get a $10,000 cash reward.
Is it arrest or conviction?
Just an arrest.
Just an arrest. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the case because everybody's been watching us for the first 15 minutes now of the program, and we haven't exactly said what it is we're talking about. So go ahead and give me a rundown of what happened.
Well, back on June 4th of 2002, Jane Carpenter, the wife of Brenton Carpenter, came home at about 10:30 and found her husband lying on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, dead from a knife wound to the back. As detectives got into the case, they received some information that she had left the house at 8 o'clock that morning to do some errands. And it was when she returned back at 10:30 that she found her husband. Now, police did confirm that she went to certain locations, within the city of Prescott to do those errands.
It's about 2.5 hours here, right? 8 to 10:30.
That is correct.
Okay, 2.5 hours.
But there were really some inconsistencies with what would traditionally happen in a regular murder case. For instance, I mean, there was no forced entry into the residence, which is kind of unusual. But in addition to that, nothing was actually stolen from the residence as well. And so it really...
So nothing was moved around living room, dining room,
no.
all that. The whole house looked normal except for, of course, Mr. Carpenter dead in the kitchen.
That's correct.
Okay.
And, something else that's unusual about the case, they have 3 Dachshund dogs inside the residence.
Okay.
And apparently they're very loud dogs, and neighbors have reported that anytime somebody goes over to the house, they can hear them barking often. And, the only time they obviously wouldn't bark is if maybe somebody that is known to the dog.
Sure. I mean, my dog wouldn't bark at somebody new, but yeah, anybody else, he'd go crazy.
Right. And on this particular morning, it was a quiet morning. It's in a pretty... high-end neighborhood of Yavapai Hills.
Can we talk about the neighborhood?
Yeah.
What neighborhood are we talking about?
Yavapai Hills, which is, like I said, a above average,
the homes
high,
are nice,
high middle class, neighborhood, and.
Is it forested up there?
It is.
Okay.
In certain parts of it. And, it's a neighborhood that really doesn't have any crime in it.
Are the homes close together, or are they more sort of, some of those nicer homes have got a larger lot? So.
No, they are fairly close together.
Okay.
In fact, it's in a hilly area, so there's, one or more homes that overlook it.
So it's not that their neighbors are too far away to hear what's going on. They're basic neighbors, like neighbors would be, right next door to you.
That's true.
Okay.
And even the neighbors had reported that the dogs are routinely loud, bark often when, people go to the house.
Sure.
And the way the house is situated, there's also a street that kind of goes up and around behind it.
Okay, so the street sits higher than the house does?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so on this particular day, there were neighbors outside on their back porches. There were, people up front of their house sitting out. I know detectives talked to various people that were out.
Is there kind of an age group that lives in this neighborhood? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is. It's it is a working class neighborhood, but there's also a lot of retirees in that neighborhood.
Okay. So they're home at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning.
That's
sitting
correct.
outside.
On a June 4th day.
On a June 4th day, right.
Weather's nice. And so with discussions that our detectives have had with people, the neighbors, we canvassed the neighborhood. We learned that people were not only outside almost during that entire time period from 8 to 10:30, but they also talked to people that were going for walks as well, and nobody reported seeing or hearing anything unusual, including the dogs that would normally bark as a stranger went to the house.
So there's a lot of activity going on in this neighborhood in the morning.
There is.
Okay.
There is.
All right.
And so the focus of the investigation almost immediately went to Brent Carpenter's wife, Jane Carpenter.
Okay.
Now, Jane is 20 years younger than Brent is as well.
Okay, it says he was 71 when he died.
Yes. And
when
she
he was killed.
Yes, and she was 51, I believe.
Okay.
At this point, the investigation is, going on about who the possible suspect would be. And, we got into some details about the case where we eventually ended up receiving a letter. And the letter described some intimate details about the case.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is find out who it is that wrote the letter. The letter did not identify who this person is, but described certain parts of what they saw, which we were able to confirm occurred.
Okay.
And, it did involve Jane Carpenter.
Okay.
We do know that the letter, through some DNA testing, came from a unidentified female. Now,
how'd you come up with that?
Well, the letter or the envelope, was obviously licked to have it sealed, and they took the DNA off of that.
Oh, darn.
And there was a residence that sits up behind the Carpenter's residence where a couple lives, and it overlooked portions of the residence where the crime actually occurred. And we thought that they saw, based on what was in the letter, some parts of the crime. And we detectives and the cold case squad got some DNA from that
those people.
And the DNA came back negative as compared to what was on the envelope. So at this point, we are kind of making the assumption that whoever saw that was likely going for a walk that day and was on that street that we described that went up and behind the house. And so we're asking somebody, and we hope that a $10,000 cash reward would entice that individual to come forward and identify themselves.
Now, have you guys sat outside this house, and as people walk by with their dogs and bicycles or just out for their morning walk, have you guys kind of talked to them as they're going by?
We have, and that's common in a case to where you try to come back out during that same time period where you believe that the crime occurred, so you can actually talk to people that would normally be out during that time period as well.
Okay. All right. What did the medical examiner determine on Mr. Carpenter?
Well, the medical examiner determined that he obviously did die, and they believe of a knife wound. There appeared to be a struggle that ensued prior to that incident happening, and the medical examiners do believe that altercation occurred sometime prior to the knife wound occurring. So it almost makes us believe that it possibly occurred maybe a couple hours before by the amount of blood that had pooled out, and then later on stabbed. And so it would seem unlikely.
Brutal.
Yes, and it would seem unlikely, though, that a suspect would be in the residence for that length of a time period and not have anything disturbed within the house.
All right, so $10,000 reward. What's the best way to, I guess, give you a call? 777-1988 for the Prescott Police Department, or Steve Skurja at Silent Witness.
That's correct, and Silent Witness is at
1-800-932-3232.
Right, and of course, you don't have to leave your name. However, we are looking to speak to the individual that did.
You're really interested in the person with a note. Whoever sent you this letter.
We are. We've got a lot of circumstantial evidence in the case to indicate that it was, in fact, Miss Carpenter that could have committed this crime. However, it really seems like that there was an eyewitness to the case. And so we are looking for the author of that note, and we believe that the author is still around.
Let's take another break. Lieutenant Andy Reinhardt with the Prescott Police Department in studio today. We're talking about the June 4th, 2002 murder of 71-year-old Brenton Carpenter. It's a cold case. We're looking for information, $10,000 reward. I'm Paul David, Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your Northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Skurja with Yavapai Silent Witness. Marcel Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Marcel's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Skurja.
And then Skurja's starting his...
Every year, 2 million kids play doctor by taking pills not prescribed to them. Talk to your kids about the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Beat him over the head with a rock and then come home. Oh my God, he's still alive. Welcome back to Countywide. We've got a couple minutes left in the program, so let's kind of recap the show. On June 4th, 2002 at 10:30 in the morning? Is that
That's
what you
correct.
said? 10:30 in the morning, you get a phone call from
Jane Carpenter.
Jane Carpenter saying, my husband, 71-year-old Brenton Carpenter, is lying here in the kitchen in a pool of blood with a knife sticking out of his back.
That is correct.
Okay.
And, you know, detectives do believe that Jane Carpenter is our primary suspect in the case.
That is your primary suspect.
That is correct. And we're trying to solicit the person that wrote a particular note that we believe actually witnessed something that's very pertinent in the crime.
You guys have got to be doing that, though. Just, it's right there.
It is.
You know?
And that's one person we're looking for. And hopefully our detectives can have a conversation with that individual and then make an arrest in this case so that person can receive that $10,000 cash reward.
You guys have got to have picked through that neighborhood.
We have.
I mean, everybody in the neighborhood you've probably talked to.
We canvassed that immediate area, and you know, we still cannot find a that one lead that we need to make this arrest.
That is amazing.
And we are so close to it.
With the neighbors on either side, does it neighbors on either side of the house, behind the house, and in front of the house?
That's correct.
Really, all four sides of the house?
Yeah, and
are they all retired couples? Do you know? Or?
I don't know
Okay.
personally if they are. I do know that some of the people that were spoken to that live immediately in that area were in fact retired.
Wow, but there's this letter. Somebody sent you a letter. It describes what they saw going on at the house.
Right.
But we don't know who wrote the letter.
No, and we do know that and we really feel that that letter is legitimate because they describe certain things that we were able to confirm.
And I think people watching and listening right now know that there's certain things you can't say.
Well, and that's true. I mean, you know, when we make an arrest in the case, we do want to have, you know, some information that the suspect can tell us just to confirm that that is in fact the suspect.
Correct.
And so, you know, we are trying to, you know, release as much information as we can, but, you know, keep...
At the same time, hold back a little bit.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. So we've got just a few seconds left here. A $10,000 reward right now for information that leads to an arrest. Not arrest and conviction, just arrest. You can call 777-1988, that's Prescott Police Department, or you can call Steve Skurja at Yavapai Silent Witness at 1-800-932-3232. Good to see you, Andy.
Good to see you, too.
I hope this helps. I hope somebody gets busted.
I hope they do.
All right, that's today's Countywide. We'll talk to you again next time. Have a great day.